Sorry for the delay.
Yeah, no problem.
Let's see.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey everyone.
Hey. Let's see, it's recording. And then
So excited to meet you all. Zach, I know we've been pen pals for a while.
It's been a while since we've been pen pals, but yes. Need to
I
pick
didn't know that you were a philosophical specialist.
that. Specialist is not the word I would use. Not a fan of technocracy.
Anna, are you in Switzerland?
Yeah,
Wow, it's late for you.
yeah, it's gonna be midnight right now.
whoa.
Wow. Where in Switzerland are you?
I'm in the French Switzerland and the close
Geneva,
to
Lausanne.
kind of closer to Fribourg, a
Cool.
small city. Yeah.
What are
small
you doing
village.
there?
I just live here with my husband. We just moved here last
Wow.
year.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's nice, but quite cold right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's taking a while for spring to actually come.
Yeah. In New York, it's like raining and you would not think it's spring at all. So
Yeah, I understand.
I'm in Oregon and we just had the sunniest day so far this
Oh
year.
no, I'm jealous.
So warm that I was actually sweating this morning
wow.
for the first time in a while.
Delightful.
So do you go by Mavis or you or both?
Davis.
Mavis.
Thanks for
Thanks.
asking.
Where are you? I mean, it looks like you're somewhere beautiful, but I have to imagine that that's an illusion.
I'm in Los Angeles,
Oh,
so
good.
it's pretty
Oh.
hot.
Cool.
Let's see.
Sam, how's it going with the public square and all the tech stuff? Need any help?
I just connected everything, so now it should work as soon as I click live one in Zoom. We'll be live on Index and on Twitch, so everything's going to be live stream recorded, so we'll have this archived and everything.
So exciting. No pressure.
Let's see.
I don't think we have a huge live like audience that will be in the Zoom tonight. I think like 15, 17 people signed up. But I do think that people will be so excited to see the recording and, you know, hopefully tune in on the homepage as well.
Let's see. Yep. We're good. I might just go live and then share my presentation bumper. But basically what will happen is we'll probably wait like 4 or 5 minutes. Normally we start like 5 after. And then from there, I'll just introduce the 3 of you. And if you'd like to share like anything, I'll pass the mic over that we can do a little intro. And then, yeah, after everyone does their intro, I'll just do alphabetical order, kind of like how it's listed on the like ads and websites. So we'll start with Anna and then through to Zach. So yeah, any questions? Cool. I'm very excited. It'll be super cool. Let's see, I'm gonna switch us over to live and oh, yep, people are coming, and share my screen.
Nice bumper, Sam.
Thank you. Let's see. There we go. Cool. Hi, folks who just joined. We're just going to give it a couple minutes until we get started, but thank you so much for being here. Excited for the talks to start.
Sam, did you start the live stream on the homepage?
Yeah, it should be started now. If you want to take a peek and see if it's up, that would be super helpful.
It looks like it is not connected to the Zoom. So I think you need to go down to the bottom, like the Zoom thing on the bottom and say configure live streaming service.
Like on the actual
On
website
Zoom.
or
No, on Zoom.
let's see.
On the bottom bar.
Live stream. Like live on custom live streaming
Yeah.
service.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
That should do it.
I'm gonna close it too fast.
You could also just make me the host and I can do it real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I'll work on it.
Thanks, Ellie. Mhm. Just gonna give it one more minute before we get started.
We're super curious to know who's tuning in from where tonight. So if you want to put where you're at or where you're from in the chat, say hi. Thanks so much for being here.
New York, LA, Brooklyn. Oh, Nairobi. Oh, Ryan.
Ryan, hi,
Hey.
nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you too.
How's the weather in Nairobi?
Oh, it's very hot right now, but it's the kind of heat that comes before it rains. So we're expecting the rains.
Wow.
Melbourne, Southern Oregon, Lisbon. Cool.
Very international crowd tonight.
Cool. Well, then it is 6:05. I'd say let's jump into it and get started. First, I just want to do some introductions of our speakers. So let's start with Anna. Would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, for the opportunity. Thanks everyone for coming. I am Ana Luisa. I am a Brazilian graphic designer. Right now I live in Switzerland. I can say I have worked traditionally as a graphic designer for most of the time, but since I started working in a research institute in 2019, kind of my interest shifted more into certain areas of research related to technology and social media and things like that a little bit. So yeah, right now I'm kind of more focused on the research side of things.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we'll have Mavis.
I am really happy to be a part of this conversation. I'm Mavis Yue Cao, and I'm a designer and researcher. Right now, I'm doing my thesis project at Art Center College of Design on healthcare and placebo effect. And I'm interested in things that are on the intersection of being spiritual and being scientific. And I just enjoy messing up with that space. I have a cat that's right there. And yeah, really happy to be here.
Awesome. And then we have Zach.
Hey, I'm Zach. I'm an art historian. I'm currently living in the Umpqua Valley, otherwise known as Oregon in the United States. Most of my writing is about community, which ties into my involvement in the community reading group in Los Angeles. I'm doing scholarship on currently a local old Jewish commune near my hometown, which had a history of had a successful history for a few years and then fell apart as some weird science religion guys took it over. So I'm writing the history on that currently. Big subject. I like utopia.
Awesome. Well, thanks y'all for sharing. Basically, I just want to give a rundown of the way this event is structured. Welcome to Community Conversations at Index. You've just met our awesome 3 speakers that we'll have today. And essentially, today's conversation will be focused on hope. So what that means is we're asking folks in our community, what does the future look like for the hopeful? How can we spend our time radically imagining good from the local scale to universal? And essentially these 3 awesome speakers submitted amazing responses to this prompt. And the first of those responses, which we'll hear a talk from, is Anna on an exploration on the potentials of social media platforms. And yeah, we'll be starting with that and then continuing through the list, but I'm super excited to hear what Anna has to share today. And I'll just hand over the mic to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind words. I'm gonna share my screen. Can everyone see me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, I'm on full screen. I can still see your faces, so that's good. And you can see the thing whole, right? Sorry, I'm not super familiar with Zoom.
Yeah, you're good. We can see everything.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I just introduced myself. In this presentation, I'm trying to make an attempt to merge one of my main research interests, which is right now the slow technology and making healthier use of our online time with the subject of hope, which I thought there was an interesting bridge between the 2 things. So I hope it makes sense for you as much as it makes for me. Well, I planned this presentation in a kind of an essay kind of format, have everything written down. I'm gonna read from it, especially because of the time frame. So if you don't understand something, you can interrupt me, it's fine. Okay. I understand hope as an exercise. Hope motivates action and is a catalyst for movement. I got my first computer when I was 14 years old in the young days of the Web 2.0. I was immediately intrigued and overwhelmed by the idea of connecting with people from other parts of the world. I was so curious about how someone from another country saw the world, what kinds of ideas they had, and how similar we still were. And now, jump to 15 years later, it's quite complex to define the chaotic environment of most social media platforms during the late Web 2.0 days. I think on a technical level, most platforms are designed based on how much data they can extract from us. All the possible actions have to be predetermined because they are numbers on an engagement chart. Our connections and exchanges are reduced to numbers that denote success or not. the content shows to us arbitrarily selected by an algorithm is supposed to generate as much engagement from us as possible. That's why we're constantly exposed to things that makes us sad, frustrated, and angry, because angry people click more. And I think on a metaphorical level, it's like we are lost on a river with a strong current, being dragged through immense amounts of content that never has the chance or the opportunity of becoming information, ideas, or insights, just because everything is so ephemeral. Content just requires a quick evaluation, and then it's thrown into the depths of oblivion. Our content feed shows us a surreal narrative disguised as reality, and the future looks even more bleak. I think the current state of social media can be defined as a toxic escapist fever dream. I've been taking screenshots of my timelines on Instagram and Twitter of the most nonsensical stuff that I've seen. Kind of like, this is what these platforms are telling me, that's what is happening right now that corresponds to reality. And I act accordingly to those informations that I've received. It's kind of a schizophrenic response to the world in a certain way. And then the leap into the Web 3.0 is currently being led by Meta, as they have introduced their new product, Meta Horizons. And the new advertisement for their product, they defined it as a never-changing, never-ending world beyond your world. I mean, I know it's supposed to be seductive, but I think it actually sounds quite scary. I believe that claim is supposed to engage with the natural fears that emerge from living during an apocalyptic context as we do right now. But is that really what we need to dive into an even more ubiquitous platform and microdose distorted bits of reality? And inside this context, the users are also hopeless. It's not unusual to find content on social media related to how toxic and addictive social media is. As the expectations of the development of the metaverse are also very negative, it is no surprise that the web controlled by big platforms has become a very hopeless place. And some questions that emerge from this brief analysis that we've just made are, can we imagine the life away from the big centralized platforms and its insidious capitalist logic? And can we build platforms that help us be more hopeful? And I think this is an initiative to look forward to. I'm going to focus on discussing this peer-to-peer platform called Secure Scuttlebutt. Scuttlebutt is an offline social media platform focused on discussing topics that are determined as interests of the community. Any person can create a post and use a tag with a certain interest. It's automatically possible to filtrate posts by this tag, so people can contribute and grow their contributions on any topic. To make a quick definition of peer-to-peer, it means the hosting of the platform is made through a decentralized scheme where each contributor is also a server point. P2P is an extensive topic and certainly needs its own presentation if you're going to dive any deeper into it. And the offline means that all the contributions of their participants are synchronized once they demand a reload of the timeline, unlike Instagram or Facebook, where you can see the reactions of people live on the platform. SSB is not a website platform. To participate, you need to download a software that will run the platform on your computer. The software called Patchwork offers a visualization of the platform that consists of a timeline feed with the contributions of people and topics you follow. Platforms like SSB are inherently a powerful practice because it's where people are gathering to share ideas on how they envision a better future and eventually find contributors into pursuing those ideas together. More than offering a safe platform, SSB and its contributors are concerned with creating a strong, active community. And I don't mean active as in very online and generating a lot of data, but as engaged with their interests, personal objects, and finding friends and contributors on the platform. In the beginning of 2022, the tag Strategy 2022 was started and contributors posted their plans for how to make the best of the platform in the new year. SSB contributors are actively interested in enabling more people into helping further developing and build the platform. Others are also concerned with knowledge sharing and making the platform more accessible. So I selected these screenshots that I thought were interesting about sharing knowledge and grow the contributors, all the plans that the contributors are coming up with right now. This is also another screenshot of one of the contributors of SSB. And I think SSB gives us a thrilling vision of what a platform focused on enhancing collaboration can be like. Obviously, this is just one example of the many peer-to-peer initiatives that are being made by people who hope for a better future for the internet. And since this presentation is a very introductory, kind of short, I invite everyone to continue the investigation. Of course, there is much more to this conversation of the uses of social media. And naturally, the topic expands to how to make a better use of the internet as a whole. This presentation focuses a lot on the hopeless side of the spectrum, but it's a topic I'm deeply interested in. And I believe the analysis of the current situation is fundamental for us to raise the right questions. I'd like to conclude the presentation with some other provocations I believe could help us envision a more hopeful future for social media platforms. And these are: imagining a platform that can help us make sense of information, or a platform that is open to users' exploration of new uses instead of just trapping us into the predetermined ones. A platform that helps us see the importance of our similarities instead of making us want to desperately stand out. And what is stopping us from engaging with different ways of being online? And for that, I selected a few articles for whoever got interested in the topic. So you can just take a screenshot and dive into this. Well, thank you very much.
Anna, would you be able to like just click through your slides again for us? I don't
Yeah,
think we
sure.
were able to see the images that you had selected, but I was so captivated by the words you were saying, I didn't even realize. I'm
Oh
so
my
sorry.
God. Oh, I received a thing saying sharing is paused because you shared the window to the front, and I don't know exactly what it means. Okay, I'm gonna reshare. Oh my God, I'm sorry.
No, you're all good. That was amazing.
Thank you. Participants can now see your screen. Okay.
Now we
So,
can see it.
okay, so
If you
could you
want to do a
see?
highlight reel, you have plenty of time.
Yeah, so I used kind of to illustrate the like beginning of the web 2.0 vibe, kind of teenage vibes. This is my screenshot of my Tumblr blog archive, which I was super into back in the day. And as I'm kind of like illustrating what social media seems to be for me right now, it's taken from my personal feeds, and it's just feel like extremely chaotic, nonsensical content in a certain way. And this is the rendering of the metaverse that I selected because I also feel like I feel like if it's really well with the escapist fever dream definition, it kind of enhances the concept. These are like memes of frustrated users, people who are just using platforms to say how upset about it they are. And this is a vision of the topics on Scuttlebutt. You can browse by topics. These are the latest discussed ones. These are some screenshots of contributors discussing their plans for 2022, like things that they want to do. I thought this was super interesting. Contributing to make SSB experience accessible and meaningful for offline or rural or indigenous communities. I thought it was really nice. So I took a screenshot of that as well. And the questions that I thought could be interesting, and last but not least, the articles.
Awesome. Thank you for this. I'm
Thank
going
you
to
so much.
screenshot this myself, so just give me a second.
Yeah, sure.
But this was awesome. So now that we've had that amazing presentation, what I'd love to do is open things up for questions, a little Q&A, so we can just expand on this topic a little bit more for a couple of minutes. So any questions coming in, feel free to type them in the chat or jump in live and speak them to the group.
I have a question, Anna. Do you think that this may be like a bigger question, but like, I love the examples that you showed on Scuttlebug and Patchwork.
Yeah.
Patchwork. But I wonder, like, I feel like you have to really come to those platforms with like real ideas and real content and like really something to say. Whereas Twitter and Instagram, like they've become vessels for saying nothing, which is so much easier than saying something. So I see like a real barrier to entry being like you have to like have a smart enough idea to like, put forward in these contexts. You know what I mean? It creates like almost like a, it's not as mindless as just like scrolling around. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna show the question someone on the chat asked for me to expose them. I think it makes sense what you said, but I think let's say the vibe of SSB doesn't require you to be so active in a posting way. It is important to say that everything you post there is permanent. It cannot be deleted. So I think it makes us, yes, a little bit more mindful of what we're gonna say. But I think there is also an aspect of not everything that you say has to be an original text. You can respond to something that someone else is saying. I think it's important to encourage an environment where you don't have to post something every day or all the time. Sometimes you can just come and see what people are up to and just, leave, not necessarily have something to contribute. I think it is a good environment to establish a healthier dynamic with social media on a certain way, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I agree.
Any other questions out there in the crowd?
Okay, someone posted something on the chat. I'm curious on how we can relate online commuters to be hopeful together, especially when we hear so much noise from social media and it is easy to lose hope over things. Are there spaces like this? I want to be part of it. Not sure I completely understand it as a question. How we can create, okay. I mean, some of these platforms are just literally lines of code on a GitHub that you use Patchwork to create a visual version of it. So of course, you kind of need to be a programmer nerd or have a friend who is a programmer nerd. But I think there is a thing that we don't have to be so dependent on platforms as well in order to develop tools to connect. Like I have a friend right now who is doing an Euro trip, and he's sharing all of the content through newsletters on email of friends who chose to receive the information about his trip. And it is a way of connection that chooses a different platform to do that. I think it's interesting to kind of take a step back and look at platforms a little bit as tools and see how we can use them to achieve certain goals instead of inhabiting those platforms like Web 2.0 place kind of thing. I don't know if it answers your question, but definitely gathering a group of friends helps a lot, I think. I think there's also another platform, but this one is like more regularly online called Mastodon. It is like kind of a version of Twitter as well. I know a lot of friends of mine are talking about it recently.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about that platform because I know like Twitter has what is it called? Blue Sky or like something like that where they're like trying to make a competitor to Mastodon that's like kind of like decentralized. So basically like everyone can make their own Twitter with their own rules. But I wonder like how useful you think those like type of projects are for people, like because is it really that different than like Facebook just making like their own metaverse that's walled off if the root of it's still made by some like mega corporation?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't consider it a solution if it comes from a big corporation, because I think they have a profit motivation in the end. And this, I mean, as time goes by, definitely kind of perverts the connectiveness, whatever goal is of the platform, because you kind of depend on getting more data points from the users to further develop your platform, and it kind of just becomes a trap. I think there's definitely like when you go to Mastodon or SSB, there's definitely a different vibe in which you approach the platform. In Twitter, the energy is kind of you need to generate clout on a certain way. You need to gain attention. So I think the thing starts on the contributor. I like to refer to people as contributors instead of users, depending on the platform that I'm referring to. And the kind of approach that, as I'm not here to say something that I want to go viral and I want to be seen by everyone, but kind of with a different approach, like I want to connect with people, or I want to see what this specific group of people are discussing today. I want to, so I think this definitely helps settle in the how you're gonna, merge with the environment, definitely. Yeah, I'm thinking how we can use these tools for us and not letting them use us. I think this is like, my presentation was just kind of a small part of a very big topic about how to make a better use of your time online, building better online practices. There's definitely, you can go on Arena, probably gonna find a lot of content on that. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of articles and things that you can read that will help you take this different perspective.
Any other questions coming up before we move to the next hot topic?
I do wonder with proposals for decentralized for a decentralized web, or moving away from this web 2.0 vision of the metaverse in the Facebook example, of what parts of it lend itself to privatization. Like what are the largest threats in just assuming that using these platforms, these alternative platforms, are inherently against the systems that do exist.
You mean what are the biggest threats to implementing the large use of these platforms?
Yeah, how can those alternative platforms potentially be co-opted? How can they be taken over by business interests? How can they be taken over by privatization?
Well, I think definitely if it's not a peer-to-peer platform, if people start hosting them on servers that are whatever, Google servers or something like that, is definitely a way, because not all of the alternative platforms are going to be P2P. Maybe not everyone has the hosting capacity. So I think that that is something that could happen. But yeah, it's a good question. I don't have a very extensive answer for that, to be honest. But yeah, I think it's a good provocation.
Cool. Well, thank you all for that awesome Q&A session. I don't know, I'm like super excited from that talk. You did an amazing job, like definitely captivated this audience. So thank you so much again for your time. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Then let's jump into the next one. Mavis, would you want to yeah, get us started?
Thank you, Sam. I'm gonna pull up my screen here. Is it showing?
Yep, it's showing.
Great. I'm really happy to, first of all, thank you, Anna. That was really a great presentation. Some parts of my thoughts are still in that presentation. The topics I'm going to share is about Amulets, placebo, and how that inform us to build a culture of hope in healthcare system. I'm going to start the sharing from Amulets, which is something I've always been fascinated by, like their materials, their shapes, their colors. And I like them most because they represent how we express our hope when it comes to healing, when it comes to protection and good luck. And the form of them can cover a very broad spectrum. Like they can be objects, they can be wearables, they can be something you put under a pillow, can be something you put on your car, or it can be a magic spell, like Sana Sana Coleta de Rana. It is a Spanish saying that mothers will say to their kids when they get sick. It means heal, heal, frog's tail. If you don't heal today, you will heal tomorrow. And I'm going to share a personal amulet that I have. It is a note that says, God bless you. I got this in 2020. It was the early time of the pandemic. It was pretty dark. Everyone was confused and sad, isolated. And one day I was shopping, I was checking out, and I sneezed. This cashier write down, "God bless you," and hand over to me. And it was just so beautiful, and it literally light up my day. I kept it in my wallet for like 2 weeks, and till today I still have it on my desk under a piece of glass. And it is, I just love it because "God bless you" is such a simple way to show someone that you care about their well-being. And when we look at the history, why do we say "God bless you"? I think a lot of people know this story, and there are so many versions of the origin. Like some people say it's because people used to believe there are evil in our soul, so they say "God bless you" to ward off the bad evil. And some say it's because during the 6th century, there was a plague, and sneezing is an early sign of you're sick. So when people see you're sneezing, they say "God bless you," because people were religious. And that just shows how throughout the whole medical history, healing, hope has always been a part of healing, and hope and medicine are always inseparable. And when we think about "God bless you" under this context of COVID, the one lesson that we learn from this pandemic is we are not only just ourselves, we become a part of a larger public health. Taking care of our own health is not just a personal thing. We are taking care of ourselves by doing a favor to the larger public health. And by saying "God bless you," it makes everyone just automatically become a caregiver of each other. We look out for each other. We become a team. And I've even seen people say "God bless you" to a dog. And that is just so interesting, like how hope can make us do things like this. And I'm going to move to placebos. It is another example of hope, which is comparing to amulets, it is more real, more measurable by medical instruments, and is so well documented about how hope works on our body. The definition of placebo is like when the doctor gives you a sugar pill and you think it's medicine and your body just cure yourself. It doesn't work on all of the disease, but to things like chronic pain, social stress, or psychosomatic disease, it is very, very helpful. And the way that placebo operate themselves is exactly the way hope operate themselves. Like some examples of placebo effect is when you spend more time in the doctor's office, the more placebo response your body will have. And the more money you spend on the medicine, the more effective the placebo is. And they also differ from culture to culture. Like some culture respond to yellow as painkillers, and some culture respond to like blue as calming. And it's also associated with their taste. And it just shows how culture plays an effect in building our hope. And there is an interesting phenomenon called open label placebo effect. It means when your doctor gives you the placebo and they tell you it is sugar pills, your body still cure yourself because first of all, you believe in the doctor. Second of all, the doctor might say something like this. Some of the patients who are experiencing the same symptoms as you, they're taking this placebo and they're reporting they get better. And you might want to try this because it might actually work on you. And then your body just start that process and cure yourself. And it reveals that the presence of a larger community of a support group can also trigger placebo effect. And currently, the medical system is treating placebo effect as interruptions. Like you have to prove that the medicine is not a placebo, or it is more effective than a placebo before it gets approved by FDA. But there is so many things that we can learn from it in terms of how to increase the efficacy of the medicine. So as a summary, hope and medicine are always inseparable. Hope is everywhere in the healthcare. And when we're designing the healthcare system, we should think about where do we leave place for us to express our hope, because it inspires us to think about what is considered as medicine and what is not, and what is healing and what is not. Because in the modern world, the idea of the medicine has been conflated with science. When we are saying we want a medicine, we actually mean we want a scientific solution. we want some answers that is rooted in the process, in the research, in the grants, in cure, in those PhDs trying so hard working for you. But medicine, it is not only the science, it is also hope. If we take hope away from medicine, what we get is pills and procedures. But to me, it is actually not the whole concept of the healing. And from placebo effect, we can learn so much about how to expand the concept of healing. And that will be my presentation. I hope it's interesting, 7 minutes.
Wow, that was excellent. I loved that. That was so great. Yeah. Round of applause. That's awesome. Any questions or like, let's open this up. Like, this was an awesome topic. Or like initial thoughts. I know I have many, but I want to let other people jump in first.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love what you just presented. Is very mind-blowing in a certain way, eye-opening as well. I just a thought. I think you talked about a lot about caring as a way of building community and protecting. I think that's definitely something that has been exacerbated during the pandemic. Recently, I've been reading some things about gardening as an expression of caring and of a kind of as a developing of a concept of radical caring and things like that. I think it's super interesting. It fits into the conversation. I was an interesting merge.
Yeah,
into the
radical
two
caring,
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that book in the library. I'll get it next time.
Yeah, it's really good.
I think something that came to mind for me is like the different labels you had under placebo of like community and care and things like that. And you mentioned like open labeling, but I was thinking a lot about like white labeling and like what it would mean to like take those concepts that are like under placebo and have some sort of like white labeled version of it that you could like apply to other spaces or communities or things like that. I don't know. I was just thinking about like what would it mean to like somehow package these like concepts and reproduce them or like use them as like a pattern to like share with others.
I actually created a placebo kit and I handed, I'm gonna share a photo of it real quick. I'll try to find it first.
Yes, please do.
My keynote. Sorry, just 1 second. Okay, sharing my screen right now. So this is a placebo kit that I designed. And there are templates for prescriptions. And this is a manual of how you design the placebo. And I give it away to people to see what they put in there. And to me, this is forming a catalog of hope. And it shows like what is not presented in the current medicine system and what people are trying to get out from the medicine, but they're so frustrated about. Let's see what we have. Like for example, this one is a mother. She prescribed this placebo to her son because her son have hard time falling asleep before exams. And it's interesting because children, they are very responsive to placebos because they have that 100% trust to their parents. And it also shows like one of the aspects of placebo effect is the authority figures. Children believe in parents, and like some people might believe in church, some people believe in doctors. So there are so many resources of hope that can, in terms of health. And this is, this placebo will help you dream about your work and you will be inspired in your dreams. I can make phone calls. This placebo will give me the courage and the phone call will go great. And I made some promotion posters for those medicine. Okay, for some reason, there's only one of it. Yeah, but that is the idea.
Can I ask you a
Yes.
question?
Yeah, please.
I loved how in your presentation you said that we can choose like placebos or we can choose like prescriptions and procedures. And I thought that it was interesting that you presented those as like binaries. And I'm wondering like, what do you, in this context, what do you think the opposite of hope is?
That's a good question. Because first of all, I have a hard time defining what is hope itself. I have so many, like the more I get exposed to it, the more confused I get about like what is hope and how is it different from expectations and wishful thinkings. And in terms of what is the opposite of hope, I would say it is, it's gonna take me like 30 seconds to think about this. I think it is about treating the patients like mechanics or parts, because that mindset is showing a lack of care to patients themselves. And yeah, I think it's more about a medical methodology. A hopeful methodology means you literally care about them and consider them and try to help them make sense of their illness in terms of their whole life story. And the upside of them will just be viewing them as objects, as parts, and trying to fix them. So that is my answer for now, but that's a very good question, and I'm going to
Definitely an answer that I think we'll all be like thinking about for a while. I asked it because I know someone who has a chronic illness and they have a sense of resignation. And I wonder if resignation is also an opposite of hope. I don't think there's one opposite, but your presentation made me think about that person and made me think about this, this healing, this method of healing.
I actually started this research from chronic illness because I was always fascinated by, like I know some people who have chronic illness and they're always trying so hard to make do with what they have and try to live the best life out of what they have. And they're living with chronic pain, but they always stay hopeful and try to get out of it. And that's what got me into thinking about what does hope mean in healthcare and how does it help people.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Thank you. I was just wondering, like, it kind of seems like the placebo is maybe something that gives hope within this particular context, like in a context where the medical system fails so many people and, like, as you said, like can't see people as whole, nuanced people, and instead sees them as like machines or something, like individual parts. And I wonder, like, for you, what is the future of medicine, and does it go beyond like placebo, or what could be different? And is this just like a first step?
I think by removing some stigma on placebo effect and celebrate some part of it, it is a starting point to think about the future of healthcare. That's also it is a big question, but if I unpack it from like, what can we do for now? I think I'm just thinking about what happens in a doctor's office. Like something that's very simple can be changed is their framing of their illness. Or like when they give the medicine to the patients, what do they say? Like, this medicine might help you and you should take this medicine, can generate totally different effects on the patients. So to start paying attention to small details like this is actually going to do a lot for the patients. And how do we take this into the future? It is, I don't think I can answer that at this moment. But I do think, to me, it is something that's valuable to think about.
Maybe I've got a question. So I was thinking about one of the last things that you said about, I'm paraphrasing, but a mistaking of science and medicine. How I'm understanding it, medicine is monopolized by technical expertise. That it's like dominated by this mechanical view.
Yeah.
But also in that, I'm curious what you think about the relationship between the placebo and authority. Thinking about like the technical expert who is a doctor being an authority. Does a placebo then rely on authority in general?
I think, to me, the answer is yes, because not only about placebo effect, amulets can also be seen as a kind of placebo effect. And the power of amulets apparently comes from like the church, from a family member that you really trust in. And when we take them into a medical context, when it becomes placebo effect, it really comes from our trust in the healthcare system, our trust in the technology. So yeah, I would say placebo effect comes from the authority, which is kind of humorous because we're talking about hope, which is supposed to be something that we have like from our heart by ourselves. But when I think about hope comes from authority, it's kind of weird now.
Any other questions, statements, yeah, coming from this conversation for folks? I don't know, my gears are turning right now, so I'm like, I'm still processing. If not, we can transition to the next talk. There'll be like a little panel after for folks. So if you still have questions, just know like we're gonna come back and do like one last call. So no worries. Cool. Then I guess we can like move to the next topic. Thank you so much again. That was so good. And yeah, let's pass the baton to Zach.
All right. I don't have slides for you. I've got a piece to read. So I'm talking about Walter Benjamin and Ernst Bloch, who were two German Jewish writers who lived in the early 20th century, wrote very frequently in the interwar period in Germany. Let me just start then. It can't be said that Walter Benjamin and Ernst Bloch saw eye to eye. Indeed, the two held views widely diverging from one another in many regards, yet their essential aims had much in common, each arguing a politics of utopia. Both German Jews wrote during the First World War and the years leading up to the Second. They were also friends and close colleagues, though their relationship was a strained one. As they concerned themselves with subjects far beyond the scope of their peers, Benjamin and Bloch occasionally referenced each other and shared some core ideas. They could be understood as two sides of the same coin, whose utopianism may have gazed in opposite directions, but nonetheless informed one another. In conversation, their ideas may still prove useful for us today in considering utopian politics as both necessary and possible. Even prior to the First World War in Europe, many believed capitalism was nearing its ultimate demise, that its contradictions would lead to its destruction and a new social order would emerge. The war appeared to confirm that self-destruction, fueling hopeful revolutionary movements in its wake. But those years signified a far more consequential shift in what was considered possible, as Bloch described, quote, "Man today is thoroughly acquainted with the frontier existence outside the previous expectation context of becomeness. He no longer sees himself surrounded by ostensibly completed facts and no longer considers these as the only real," unquote. What Bloch asserts here is the nature of impossible times, that when one's sense of what is real has been shattered, new realities can be built. Against the prominent view of reality as fixed, observable, and measurable, Bloch here refers to the impossible times of his day as an unknown territory of where we imagine ourselves in the time of the universe. But this existence on the edge of history, on the edge of known reality, does not only present possibilities for leftists, as Bloch explains. Along with socialism, quote, "devastatingly possible fascist nothing has opened up in this real," unquote. The edge of reality provides routes not only to a better world, but to annihilation. In the 1930s, Bloch argued that Nazism, a vanguard of the fascist nothing, was fundamentally a perverted theocratic movement. The language of realizing a worldly third kingdom, or Reich, was pulled directly from Christian apocalyptic thought. Benjamin similarly repudiated the politics of theocracy, stating, quote, "Only the Messiah himself completes all history, in the sense that he alone redeems, completes, creates its relation to the messianic. For this reason, nothing that is historical can relate itself from its own ground to anything messianic," unquote. For both Benjamin and Bloch, the utopian kingdom of God could not be established in worldly politics within the confines of history. This utopia would only come at the end of history. History, for Bloch, displays its Scotland Yard badge, and for Benjamin, documents the barbarism of civilization. With fascism then as an antichrist, attempting to fabricate a false kingdom of God on earth, Benjamin instead demands that the secular order should be erected on the idea of happiness. Happiness for Benjamin is the rhythm of messianic nature. In his view, nature itself contains a messianic character, always moving toward its own transcendence. Bloch too outlines nature as a messianic site, quote, "Nature in its final manifestation, like history in its final manifestation, lies at the horizon of the future," unquote. As part of nature, humanity stands not only in history and on the ground of human activity, but on nature's conceptual frontier. We move toward a horizon, toward new potential realities in the realm of what Bloch called the not yet conscious. The ground of history here is the deck of a ship, and human nature the sea. We are ever sailing into the horizon, which constantly shifts as we are carried by currents and led by the wind and stars. For Bloch, the horizon is the place of dreams we sail into. Through daydreams, the awake humanity steers the ship toward utopia. It taps into current tendencies in the present to journey toward the land of dreams. For Benjamin, the sea, the reality we live in, is the dreamscape, and the task is instead to reach the horizon of awakening. His politics of happiness is a revolutionary nihilism, a rejection of what he and Bloch recognize as the darkness of the lived moment. In the notion of progress, as espoused by the social democrats of their day, Benjamin and Bloch identified a dangerous form of quietistic optimism. This automatic false optimism, as Bloch called it, regards the future as something which has long since been decided and thus concluded. Against this dogmatic progressivism, which Benjamin claimed made time homogeneous and empty, they developed two divergent outlooks on utopia. Bloch calls for a militant optimism through which, quote, the repressed elements of the new humanized society, that is, of the concrete ideal, are set free. It is the revolutionary decision of the subjective factor in alliance with the objective factors of economic material tendency, unquote. In short, militant optimism activates what is currently possible and pushes it to its limits, shifting the horizon of what will be possible tomorrow and challenging the rhetoric of our arrival at a static end of history. Alternatively, Benjamin puts forward an organization of pessimism, which finds its basis in, quote, mistrust in the fate of literature, freedom, and the fate of European humanity, but 3 times mistrust in all reconciliation between classes, between nations, between individuals, and ultimate trust in IG Farben, the German chemical cartel, and the peaceful perfecting of the Air Force, unquote. Benjamin scorns the progress promised by capitalism and the state, asserting that their only sure promise is the expansion of violence. He calls for a rejecting of moral metaphors in politics and the deployment of artists into the space of political action, the actualization of an image of utopia into real concrete utopia. Benjamin and Bloch illustrate 2 trajectories of thought that emerge from the same point of resistance against progress in the popular sense. In that progressivism, history is the narration of a destined outcome, that of the present day, which then extends itself into a future of pure appearance. The future is said to already be fated, and it is of the order of darkness we find ourselves in today. But the future is never certain in nature, never predetermined. Benjamin and Bloch gift us with an ecological view of time, insisting that the order of the present can and will pass away. That is, if we work to transcend it. Hope, then, must be to understand that reality is never fixed. Questions?
Thanks, Zach. That was awesome. Yeah, any questions, y'all? Any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I have a question. I would like to know how you would make the parallel between the theories that you just presented with the context that we live right now, because I think there's kind of like a
How to parallel it?
Yeah.
Well, the context of when the 2 of them were writing. So the writings that I have been referencing are mainly in the 20s and 30s. So they're writing in Germany as the Nazi party is rising, and ultimately it is fleeing from that Nazi Germany that ends in Benjamin's death. Bloch's escape to the United States, and he resettles in East Germany later. I think that what's important to parallel there is that they lived in a time of great crisis. And I think it's very clear that we still live in a time of great crisis. But I wouldn't just say that the time that we live in now is merely a repetition of that era, but that era sets up the rest of history up to today, that we have been living in a state of crisis since then, but also before then. I think that that moment in particular in European history was climactic, but I don't think that it's necessarily like unheard of. I think of Aimé Césaire's thoughts on the Second World War and the Holocaust as being like expected. It's just everyday business for Europe. That's colonialism in a nutshell, but it's just applied to European territory. So I think that to understand their time as being in crisis, we also need to recognize that we are still in crisis. We've always been in crisis. So they remain relevant, I think.
So
Yeah, thank you.
So do you find hope in that? Because like we've always been here? Like this is nothing new, kind of?
Well, I say always, I should rewind that a bit. I think that where we are now in human history is, it's recent. The always is recent. Human beings have been around for an estimated 200,000 years. This span of the universe is much greater than that, and the way of life that we know, particularly in the West, of like settlement, agriculture, industry, has only been the norm for the majority of the world for the past like 3, maybe 4 centuries. So not that long. So I think that when we understand ourselves to be in crisis and having been in crisis, that is also to say that like there have been times prior to this one that may have had crises of their own, but that it was a fundamentally different world at one point. And it means that crisis does not have to happen forever, that humanity is in flux, history is in flux.
Because I also read it as like all things must pass.
Well, it's not only must pass, but that they can.
Yeah.
I think Bloch's whole life was spent trying to philosophically prove that hope is possible, that it's not just some outlandish, irrational belief, but that hope is actually just part of the natural world, that hope is his famous book is The Principle of Hope, that it's entirely realistic to be hopeful because nature is always changing. And as I said, nature is always trying to transcend itself. That's evolution in a nutshell. That's history in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think this feeling of inescapability is also kind of like a tool from capitalism to kind of keep us unable to imagine how things could be living in a different type of system.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like okay, the world is gonna end like this, but I cannot envision a different way of living besides this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm reminded of your talk about the decentralized web. I mean, one could even think about looking back to the recent past. The web was not necessarily centralized as it is now, and we're being told by companies like Facebook, I don't care if they call themselves Meta, companies like Facebook will say, centralization is, it's the way things have to be. We are fated to have a centralized, universal web, universal humanity. But, you look to the past, and I think that it's safe to say many of us would look back to the earlier days of the internet and see a much more wholesome internet. So there is a case to be made there of like, well, we've lived in a decentralized web before, so we could easily restore that if we put our minds to it.
Yeah, that's what I'm hopeful for.
I don't know. I think something about what you said about time, like and its relationship to nature, or like, yeah, an ecological view of time. I don't know. I think a lot about the way that like time has not been centralized, like on the planet, if that makes sense. Like Ethiopia, for example, like they never like really experienced like full colonization. So because of that, they're literally like 8 years like behind us in time. Like it's like 2014 or something like in Ethiopia right now. And like they don't experience, their whole New Year starts in September. Like they don't actually experience the same time as us at all, like whatsoever. And I wonder, like, I don't know, it just makes me think that, yeah, like all these things have happened and time has moved on, but in some places in the world, like they're not even experiencing this urgency or this like level of collapse or anything, like, you know, like that this is not even the forefront of their minds. Like
Mm.
this is something that we're like making up here, if that makes sense. And like
Mm.
we're choosing for this to be a thing, but it doesn't actually have to be at all. And I don't know, I just think it's super interesting when people start talking about like time and its relationship with hope.
Mhm. Yeah, it's time is definitely not universal. And the thing that comes to mind is the case of Bolivia instituting a symbolic clock that ran in the opposite direction as like a response to the course of time being imposed by the global north on the global south. Or you know, like one could travel to Cuba and one could be surrounded by cars from the 70s, and that feels like going back in time, as I've heard it reported. But it, yeah, time is made up. Time is a concept, and also I think that thinking about how writers like Benjamin and Bloch refer to messianic time, or the end of history. They are, I think they are using time as a tool, because I mean, they're writing in Europe, in the West, where ideas of the end of history are very appealing, but they're also very much a part of the human condition in that kind of society. And that is, it's baked into Christianity. It's baked into many religious beliefs stemming back to like Zoroastrianism in old Persia, which is a long time. So I think that tapping into the attractiveness of that can be used as a tool for mobilizing people, for challenging stuff that we can't even see. You mentioned Ethiopia, and like life seems very different in different parts of the world. You know, one here might understand crisis, whereas somebody else would not think of crisis in the same way. But certainly there are crises that will be affecting the whole world. Climate crisis is going to be affecting everybody or most everybody, whether it is immediately invisible or not. And so I think that thinking about that makes me me personally, more eager to think about how to deal with not just crisis, but rhetoric of the world coming to an end.
Right. And I think like what's so interesting about like the 3 talks that we've had today is like, yes, like everyone's experiencing this like collapse or crisis like in different ways, and we're all like experiencing the internet and like all these little like microcosms. But at the end, it's like kind of like this, everyone's getting a different placebo, if that makes sense. Like everyone is like experiencing all these things and coping with them in like such different ways, whether that's through community or care, or time. And yeah, it's been super interesting to like hear the 3 of your perspectives on like how they're engaging, how everyone's like kind of thinking about how this hope like turns up and like what it's being used for, like whether that's being used to cope with this like end of history, or um like a illness, or just like community organizing. It's just like super interesting. Yeah, just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to the time conversation thing. I think it's a extremely rich conversation. There is a deep anthropological aspect to it about how different cultures perceive time or reality. You know, it's just definitely. And I think, I mean, I could be a very unpopular opinion. I don't know. I think when we start to impose a certain way of understanding reality and understanding time into a global scale, we kind of lose a lot of the richness of each individual culture and how they deal with crisis. I mean, the global or locally, and kind of in a way make them less resourceful, because we kind of make everyone have a response that was developed just by a small group of people and kind of makes more sense to them. And it's funny because a couple years ago, I found this Chinese philosopher called Yuk Hui. I'm gonna write on the chat. And it's interesting. He talks about how he believes the geographical location of an area should be how can I say, a fundamental point in order for it to develop its own technology. And kind of what he's trying to do is like redefine the concept of terre, taking into consideration the geographical location, and kind of developing a theory on how places can be more resourceful and resilient in this context. Because it's interesting that we are kind of conditioned to think that the end of times is kind of going to be an event, you know, the skies are going to open, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are going to come down, but it's kind of a long process. And yeah, it definitely requires us to, you know, search into other ways of interpreting philosophy and you know, things like that.
Yeah, I think that's where Bloch's idea of the end of history is helpful, because he doesn't see it as it being an end. Sailing a ship out at sea is the metaphor he uses. And as one moves toward the horizon, there's always going to be another horizon. The horizon just keeps moving. So in his mind, you're probably never going to get to a hard end. But whatever it is that you would call utopia, that end is still going to be something that is becoming something else. You're always going to be in a process, always going to be becoming something else, something more.
Yeah, definitely. Also, because I think it's like we can only thoroughly analyze a certain context when we are a long time past it. So when you're living through it, it's definitely makes a lot more sense to perceive it as a process than trying to analyze and establish like in a history book type of thing, you know?
Yeah, I also think that you're touching on an idea that reminds me of a short anecdote in which my uncle, who's Orthodox Jewish, he and I were having a conversation about something or another, and I brought up some date and said, this year AD, and he corrected me and said, "You mean CE?" He said, I'm Jewish. The AD thing doesn't work for me because that's related to Christianity. But then I thought, wait, but he's still thinking of the same years on the Gregorian calendar, which was developed by the Catholic Church. So it doesn't really make much of a difference. He's still thinking in the same way. He's just applying a different appearance to it. And so even though we I think while we talk about, you know, different concepts of time, that time is not something universal, I think that's something we always have to be wary of, is that when we talk about thinking in terms of different kinds of time, different kinds of history, we actually have to really try to think about different kinds of time and history and not just project our own, or the sense of time that's been imposed on us onto whatever we think is different.
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, I think definitely when I hear you say that, reminds me a lot of some of the works of Oliver Sacks, who was a neurologist, and he wrote a lot about different kinds of neurological conditions. And it definitely gives you some insight and into how people with, you know, different brain conditions function. And in one of his main books called Awakenings, he talked about exactly this patients who had a huge distortion of time perception, like they spent hours completely not moving, doing a certain thing, and in their head it just took a few seconds. And he talks with these people, and it kind of really helps you understand, yeah, river of consciousness, as well as like amazing. It definitely helps you kind of get into the mindset of understanding really how it could be.
Well, on that note, I just want to give folks a minute to process everything we've talked about, and just give like a 5-minute break And then from there, I'll just like leave, yeah, final questions for all the speakers and things like that. But yeah, let's just return in like 5 minutes at 7:20, and then we'll do like yeah, just a quick fire round of questions before we close out. Thanks, y'all. See you in 5. Okay, y'all. Welcome back. Just gonna give a second for people to come back.
Zach, do you listen to Philosophize This?
I have before. I don't very actively listen to podcasts, but
Yeah, I don't either, but my boyfriend loves it's Stephen Knight, right, babe? Yeah. And he kind of writes, I don't know, he writes like really great sort of thematical summaries of philosophical movements. And yeah, I feel like your delivery was similar to his.
In a good way.
In a good way.
Maybe I should start a podcast.
It can be Philosophize That.
Philosophize what?
Well, I'm glad to have everyone back. Hopefully, folks have some energy for a final round of questions and conversation before we close everything out. Yeah, I just want to leave it open for folks to ask the awesome speakers today if there's any questions they had for the previous talks that have been given or any final questions for Zach. Yeah.
I'll just make an observation. I got such an interesting sense of like scale shift from our talks today. Like I felt like Mavis, like your talk was like so much about like the internal processes of hope, but not just internal, because they're, like you were saying, culturally enforced, and like they come from like, you know, your systems of trust that are immediately around you. And then, you know, kind of zooming out one scale, I feel like was like Anna's talk about, you know, kind of these corners of the internet in which like people come together and create like, I don't know, potentially hopeful outcomes through social, you know, social, I don't know, hanging out, like through getting to know each other. And then Zach like kind of took like this like really long view, and I just thought that that was a really interesting like 3-part exploration of hope on the scale of like the small to the large, the micro to the macro.
Yeah. Well, any other speakers have any closing notes they want to leave us with, I guess? Or, oh, Anya, did you have?
Yeah, I had a question. Well, in a similar, hi Ellie, a similar observation to like noticed a massive, you know, scale shift on a positive level. Like, I don't know, like on the side, I was talking to my grandpa today who lives in Russia, and he's like, "Oh, everything's fake." Like, oh my god. But you know, it really helped like pull me out on a greater level of just like, you know, we're you know, on earth in this time and place, and kind of the cyclical nature of events and how they run parallel with nature. My question for the speakers is, how do you, if you do, manifest hope, you know, through, do you have any practices for manifesting hope?
I mean, I can start, I think. I grew up in a very religious Catholic family, and during my whole life, I understood hope as a very passive thing. Like when you want something to happen a certain way, you pray and you just that's the most you can do, because then you just pass the problem to the higher level in a certain way. And then growing older and understand myself better, I kind of, as I like to define hope in my presentation, kind of like define hope as something that helps you take actions on a certain way. Like, for example, I don't know, I'm not going to buy this product at Amazon today because, you know, I hope that, you know, they go bankrupt or something like that. And I think my research on a certain way is a kind of a hopeful practice, because it's just diving into understanding things that I believe will help me make better decisions for myself, and make me able to questions the thing that I don't like, understand why I don't like certain things, and you know, just help me envision a different future from the one we seem to be doomed to reach in a certain way.
For me, since I have been working on placebos for a while, and a lot of people are expecting me to have some placebo like experience or practices, but I actually don't really have that much of them, even though I did do some of them for a research purpose. But I was thinking about where do my hope come from yesterday. And I think my answer is, I just look back at my previous experience and to recognize what is the crisis that happened and what did I do that helped me got over it. And every time I got over a crisis or challenge, there is an affirmation that comes from myself. And like I keep collecting them, and that would be the source of my hope. So I think it's about like recognizing your pattern, your behavior, just understand myself.
For me, manifesting hope, well, I work in history, so I think that for me, studying history, being part of a reading group that studies historical movements and community building, I think it's a lot easier to find the fragments of hope and piece them together through study, and studying with other people, of learning about the past too. I think that I'm kind of along the lines of Benjamin's thinking on the not yet conscious, is that it's not only moving toward something that is yet to be known, but looking to the past as a place that is yet to be known. Because like where we are right now, we know next to nothing about most of human history. And so to find the glimmers of that, even in recent history, of different ways of living, of different kinds of societies, different ways of being a person, I think that gives me a profound hope for the ability for us to, reach something new, or I mean, even in like a restorative sense, to find a way to get back to like a more oscillative way of life, a more meandering way of life, a freer way of life that maybe our ancestors once had something that we don't have.
That was awesome. Thank you for your answers. And I think on that note, I feel like we're good to close everything off. Thank you so much to our speakers. I just wanted to give you an opportunity, if you get a chance, to put like where we can find more of your work in the chat. That way folks can keep in touch and we can share that out as we share this recording. And other than that, thanks y'all. Really appreciate your time. This was awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone who came and participated as well. It was really nice.
Yes.
I learned a lot. Here's my notes.
Thanks for having me. And Anna and Mavis, I'm very happy to have heard your wonderful thoughts.
Likewise.
Giving me a lot to think about.
Well, have a great night, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.